Hello, everybody. This is the William A. Wise Law Library Presents an Introduction to Outlining. My name is Cody James, and today we will be talking about outlining. The following lecture will be broken down into three parts. Part 1 will be a discussion of what you do before you start outlining. Part 2 will be a discussion about how to build your outline, and Part 3 will be a discussion of how to study from your outline. Welcome to Part 1 of our Introduction to Outlining. My name is Cody James, and this section will cover the basics of outlining, when you should start, and whether or not you should use a commercial outline. You've probably heard your classmates talk about outlining for classes, and you might have an idea of what it is yourself. But what exactly is outlining in regards to law school? It's the process of distilling complex ideas that you learned in a class into a well-organized and reasonably lengthy study aid. The idea is to take all the independent topics and legal rules that you learned and weave them together into a coherent and interconnected framework. And through this process of weaving together interconnected legal ideas, you're actually teaching yourself the law. And this is really the important part of outlining. The process of outlining is an active studying, and you're learning the things that you need to know for the final exam. And that's one key takeaway when you're trying to begin outlining, is that it is about the process as well as the final product. In regards to when you should start outlining, the short answer is that sooner is better. Law school is a time-consuming place, and outlining is no exception. It can take weeks before you're finished start outlining, and to actually effectively use it, you need time to create it. If you try and wait till the last couple of days of the semester to do it, you might finish it in time, but you won't have a chance to actively study from it. So when exactly should you actually create it? There is no hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, you should have at least started by October. Now, if you're listening to this in the last couple weeks of the semester and you have not begun outlining, do not panic. Remember, it is always better to start and at least have somewhat of a finished product than to never begin at all. You might have heard your classmates talk about this outline they bought from this third-party vendor, or even possibly they got an outline from someone that aced the class 2 years ago. So it raises the question, should you use someone else's outline, whether that be a commercial or a former student's? The answer is probably not. Here are 4 reasons why you should avoid those type of outlines. First, outlining is about the process, and if you use someone else's outline, then you have never gone through the process of actually wrestling with the concepts and ideas to form an effective outline, which is vital in your studying habits. Second, an outline needs to be a manageable length. You ideally want to be able to read through your outline a couple of times before the exam. And a lot of commercial outlines can reach almost 400 pages. And you know as well as I do, you won't have time come finals to read 4 or 5 different outlines at 400 pages length. Third, commercial outlines can contain a ton of superfluous information. Each professor will teach the class in their own way, and they might choose to cover some topics more than others. For example, you might barely talk about intentional torts in one professor's class, but another one that might be covered in-depthly. Commercial outlines will cover all topics, so there will be a lot of superfluous information in those outlines that you will not need for the exam, and possibly it could confuse you when it comes to exam day. And fourth, in regards to using a classmate's outline, keep in mind that law students are not experts in these topics. There could be errors within their own outline, and you might fall in the trap of using those errors on an exam. Also, the syllabus might have changed, so what they covered may no longer be relevant, and the law itself could have changed in the last 2 years. So it's always important to create your own outline. A parting word of advice. It can be helpful to think of your outline like a snowflake or fingerprint. It's unique to you and it's one of a kind. It was written by you, for you, and will never help anyone else understand that topic like it will help you. Your outline reflects your own unique ways of processing information, and its one and only purpose is to help you and you alone. Welcome to Part 2 of an Introduction to Outlining. My name is Cody James, and in this section, we will be discussing how to build your outline. So, how do you organize your outline? This can be a bit of a loaded question because the answer is whatever suits you best. Though there are a couple ground rules you should be aware of. And this might seem counterintuitive because a lot of your classes are based around case law. You should not build your outline around cases. Instead, it should be built around ideas and concepts. To help form these broad ideas and concepts that you need for your outline, look to your class syllabus. It will often break the class down into different topics and ideas, and you can transplant these to form the cornerstone of your outline. And if your syllabus does not work for this purpose, you can always look to the table of contents to help form the cornerstone of your outline. And from these broad ideas that will make up your outline, you will begin to focus on narrower and more narrow topics that will help flush out the different areas of the law. Now that you have the broad structure of your outline down, you'll need to define the different rules of law discussed in class. These definitions need to clearly capture what the law states and should come from your notes taken during class. Though these definitions need to be clear, they should also reflect your own understanding of the law. That means you should not just copy and paste what someone else or even what the book says. You should interpret the law into your own words, which will help you learn the concepts. And after defining the rule, you want to list the important elements of that topic. And at any point during this process, if there is a particularly important element or rule, you should highlight it. Though, be careful and use this sparingly, because if you over-highlight, then they will no longer serve a good purpose. And after listing the elements, you should go on and discuss the different cases and hypotheticals used in class that discuss this element or rule. I know I said earlier that you should not build your outline around cases, and that is still true. But cases can help highlight how the legal concepts are applied to facts, and it's possible that your final exam will use fact patterns that are similar to cases. So having these and different hypotheticals used in class can help you understand how broad concepts of law are applied to specific concrete facts. Welcome to part 3 of an introduction to outlining. My name is Cody James. In this section, we will be discussing how to effectively study from your outline. Now that you put in all that work and effort to create your outline, how do you actually use it as a study tool? First, it's important to remember that the process of making the outline was an act of studying. You were actively engaging with the concepts and ideas and putting them together in an organized outline that forces you to learn the different rules and legal concepts. Now, that gets to our second point. When trying to study from your outline, it's important to make sure you do active studying. That means you're actually thinking and engaging with the material. If you just read passively through your outline, you're not going to pick up the concepts and you're not going to remember them for the final exam. One way you can actively study is you can revise your outline. So when you go through and read it, you can help narrow it and tailor it. So you're choosing whether to exclude certain topics or include other ones. This forces you to engage with the topics and concepts in a critical manner, and from this you will learn the different topics. As you fine-tune and narrow your outline, you might start to wonder, how long should it be? And there's no right or wrong answer to this question, and it's heavily dependent on you. There are some things to keep in mind, though. An outline can be too long or too short. In terms of being too long, you want to be able to read through your outline multiple times in one day. So if it's 100 pages, it's probable that it's going to be too long. In terms of being too short, if it's only 5 pages long, the odds are you have not covered all the relevant information in adequate depth. So you want to find that sweet spot in the middle where you cover everything in adequate depth, but it's also manageable and you can use it effectively to study. Lastly, let's discuss the skeletal outline. So you've built your outline, you studied from your outline, and now it's almost exam day. How do you use your outline on exam day? One idea you can do is you can create a separate skeletal outline. This will be 1 or 2 pages long and only include the broad topics and subjects. This will act more as a checklist that you can run through during the exam. Though you can also bring your full outline, the skeletal outline can be a quick reminder of different topics you might want to answer with regards to a certain question. This concludes our lecture on an introduction to outlining. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to come out to the William A. Wise Law Library and ask a librarian.